Sometimes Hollywood's greatest tragedies happen when the cameras stop rolling. Sometimes an actor's most important moment gets erased with a few clicks in an editing room. Today, I'm going to tell you about what might be cinema history's biggest theft. This is the story of how Samuel L. Jackson's Oscar was stolen. But more importantly, it's a story that reveals Hollywood's dark side. How talent clashes with politics, and how one man stood tall in the face of injustice. If your respect for Samuel L. Jackson doesn't increase by the end of this video, then you haven't learned the real face of Hollywood. The year is 1995. Bill Clinton is American president. The internet is still a luxury, and Samuel L. Jackson is preparing for the most important role of his career. But this isn't just a role. This will be an experience that reveals the true face of the entire Hollywood system. Imagine Samuel L. Jackson at that time. 46 years old, Oscar-nominated for Pulp Fiction, talented but still not fully recognized. An actor who had proven himself in Hollywood but hadn't yet been fully accepted by the system. Jackson has the script for John Grisham's A Time to Kill in his hands. This isn't just a screenplay. It's a powerful story about America's most sensitive topics, touching on racism and justice. When I first read the script, Jackson says years later, I understood who Carl Lee Haley was. This wasn't just a character I was going to play. This was who I needed to become. Who is Carl Lee Haley? A father who kills two white men who raped and tortured his 10-year-old daughter, Tanya. But this isn't a simple revenge story. This is a complex drama where a father's instinct to protect his child collides with the failures of the justice system. Jackson analyzes this character deeply. To understand Carl Lee, he researches Mississippi's history, the roots of racism in America, the fears experienced by black fathers. This preparation process changes Jackson, because Carl Lee isn't just a fictional character, he represents a real person. Every black father understands Carl Lee, Jackson explains. Because we've all lived that moment. The moment when we realize the world won't protect our children the way it protects other children. Summer 1995. Memphis, Tennessee. Filming for A Time to Kill is about to begin. There's a powerful cast on set. Matthew McConaughey will play the young, handsome lawyer Jake Briggins. Sandra Bullock will be law student Ellen Rourke. Kevin Spacey will play experienced prosecutor Rufus Buckley. Joel Schumacher is directing. Schumacher is one of Hollywood's reliable directors at the time. He's made commercial successes like Batman Forever and The Client, a name studios trust. But there's something different about this project. A Time to Kill isn't just entertainment. It's a serious drama that touches America's deepest wounds, addressing social issues. And these kinds of films always carry risk. Jackson immediately notices the atmosphere on set. The film was designed as Matthew McConaughey's star vehicle, he says. Young, handsome, marketable actor. I was just part of the story. The first table read reveals a lot. When Jackson speaks Carl Lee's words, the energy in the room changes. The other actors aren't just listening to dialogue, they're witnessing testimony. Sam's way of bringing Carl Lee to life, says a technician who was on set at the time, made fiction feel like documentary. When he talked about his daughter, you forgot he was acting. You forgot there were cameras. You just believed. This authenticity would become Jackson's greatest strength. But also, unexpectedly, his biggest problem. First day of filming. The courthouse set under hot lights. Dozens of technical crew members. Cameras positioned to capture what everyone expects will be a solid scene. Jackson enters the set as Carl Lee Haley. But there's something different today. Jackson has discovered something in this character he hadn't found before. The scene is simple on paper. Carl Lee explains his actions to his lawyer. A straightforward exposition moment. But Jackson transforms it into something else entirely. When I started talking, I could feel it happening, Jackson remembers. I wasn't Samuel L. Jackson anymore. I was Carl Lee, and Carl Lee had things to say that weren't in the script. Jackson begins to speak. Not just Carl Lee's written words, but the truth behind them. He talks about fear and love. He talks about the weight of being a black father in America. He talks about watching his daughter grow up knowing that someday, someone might hurt her just because of what she looks like. He talks about the helplessness of being unable to protect the most important person in your world. And then he talks about the choice. To trust a system that has never protected people like him, or to take justice into his own hands. Jackson's voice grows stronger. Years of pain, Disappointment and love echo in every word. This isn't just acting. This is the artistic expression of lived experience. I found the character's soul in that moment. Jackson says, why Carl Lee made that choice, why he couldn't act any other way, why any father in the same situation would do the same thing. And as Jackson speaks, everyone on set realizes this isn't just an ordinary scene. They realize this is a moment that will go down in cinema history. When Jackson finishes his words, the set falls completely silent. No normal post-shooting chatter. No director calling cut. Complete, absolute silence. When I looked around, Jackson remembers, I saw grown men crying. I saw women with their hands over their mouths. The cameraman was wiping his eyes. This silence feels like hours, but probably lasts only a few seconds. Then someone starts clapping. Then everyone is clapping. Not the polite applause of a successful take, but the kind of ovation reserved for moments that transcend entertainment. Everyone on set knows this isn't just a scene. This is one of those rare moments when an actor lays bare their soul, showing their full potential. I knew right then, Jackson says. I knew I had just given the performance of my lifetime. I knew that scene was going to change everything. He was right, just not in the way he expected. This scene doesn't just affect Jackson. Everyone on set understands this is something special. Technical crew members whisper to each other. Other actors congratulate Jackson. Even director Joel Schumacher seems moved. Everyone who was on set that day, says someone who was assistant director at the time, knew this was an Oscar moment. Not just Sam, all of us felt this was special. But set energy and studio politics don't always align. And Jackson isn't aware of this yet. Filming continues. Jackson delivers a perfect performance in the Carl Lee role. But it's not just that scene. He's revealing the character's full complexity. In A Time to Kill, Carl Lee isn't just an angry father. He's also fearful, fragile, but at the same time determined. Jackson shows all these dimensions. During filming, we shot special scenes that showed Carl Lee's motivation. Jackson explains, moments that told of his love for his daughter, his determination to protect her. But these were cut during editing. Jackson will understand very clearly years later why they were cut. But at the time, he just thinks they're shooting good scenes. As the film's production process progresses, Jackson's performance is praised by everyone. But at the same time, some people are also feeling uncomfortable, because Jackson's performance is so powerful that it risks changing the film's focus. A Time to Kill was planned as Matthew McConaughey's star vehicle. It's supposed to be the story of the young, handsome lawyer, but Jackson's scenes are so compelling that audiences can't forget Carl Lee, and this creates a problem for the studio. Months pass. A Time to Kill enters post-production. Jackson thinks his powerful scene will be at the center of the film's marketing campaign. He imagines Oscar clips and career-defining moments. Then he sees the first cut. I was watching the movie, and I was waiting for that scene, Jackson says. I was waiting for the moment where Carl Lee really explains himself. And it never came. That scene, his scene, the scene that made hardened film professionals weep, has been reduced to a few throwaway lines. The emotional core, the vulnerable truth, the raw humanity that made it special, gone. I immediately called my agent, Jackson remembers. I said, "Where's my scene?" And he said, "What scene?" Like it never existed. Jackson watches the cut again and again. Maybe he missed it. Maybe it's in a different version. But no, that powerful, emotional, Oscar-worthy scene is gone. In that scene, I was showing Carl Lee's soul, Jackson explains. Not just what he did, but why he did it. That he had no other choice. That any father in the same situation would do the same thing. But this explanation is no longer in the film. Carl Lee has become a simpler character. Still powerful, but lacking the complexity Jackson was trying to create. It takes time for Jackson to learn why his most powerful moment was cut. The official reason was pacing, runtime concerns, the need to keep the film flowing. But Jackson knows better. It wasn't my movie, he explained simply. They weren't trying to make me a star. Matthew McConaughey was the star. Sandra Bullock was the star. I was just there. This is Hollywood's brutal arithmetic. When a supporting actor delivers a performance so powerful that it threatens to overshadow the leads, that performance becomes a problem to be solved. Jackson's scene wasn't just stealing focus. It was stealing the entire movie. In those few minutes, he had transformed from supporting player to emotional center. And that wasn't the film they had paid to make. They took the most important moment of my career, Jackson says, his voice still carrying traces of that old anger, and they threw it in the trash. This decision is made not just for artistic reasons, but also commercial ones. Studios think about the film's length, its tempo, audience reactions, and sometimes even truly powerful scenes can be sacrificed for these reasons. But Jackson's situation is different, because the cut scene affects not just the film, but an actor's entire career. Award season arrives. A Time to Kill receives modest recognition, but Jackson's name is notably absent from major contender lists. Critics praise his performance, but the praise feels hollow. Critics are reviewing what made it to screen, not what should have been there. I watched the other nominees that year, Jackson says, and I absolutely know, that my deleted scene was better than anything they submitted. But how do you compete with something that doesn't exist? This isn't sour grapes or wounded ego talking. Multiple people who saw Jackson's original performance confirm its power. It wasn't just good, it was transcendent. Jackson makes this assessment years later. The things they took out kept me from getting an Oscar. Really, motherfuckers? You just took that shit from me. And this isn't just losing an award. This is an example of how Hollywood treats a black actor's best work. This is an indicator of how the system works. Black people usually win awards for doing despicable things on screen, Jackson observes, like Denzel Washington winning an Oscar for being a horrible cop in Training Day. His great work in uplifting roles like Malcolm X. No, we'll give it to this motherfucker. These words reveal how Hollywood views black actors. Not positive characters, but problematic characters are rewarded. Jackson starts paying attention. This isn't the first incident in A Time to Kill. There are other situations where his work has been diminished in post-production. Subtle cuts here, altered dialogue there, moments of complexity reduced to simple plot points. I started paying attention, he says, and I realized this happens to a lot of us. Black actors, I mean. We give these powerful performances and somehow they get edited down, made safer, made smaller. The pattern becomes undeniable. Hollywood is comfortable with black excellence, but only in controlled doses. Too much truth, too much complexity, too much humanity, and the scissors come out. This isn't unique to Jackson. Throughout Hollywood history, countless black actors have experienced similar situations. Powerful performances cut in editing, Oscar chances destroyed, careers pulled in different directions. Jackson's experience isn't just one actor's story. It's an example of how an entire system works. Jackson faces a decision that will define the rest of his career. He can stay quiet, accept the system, and hope for better treatment next time. Or he can fight back. He chooses to fight back, but not in the expected way. Instead of public tantrums or legal battles, Jackson begins telling the truth in interviews. Calmly, factually, devastatingly. He names names, describes experiences, and forces uncomfortable conversations about how the industry really works. I decided I wasn't going to pretend anymore. He explains. I wasn't going to smile and say, that's just how the business works when the business was stealing from me. This honesty attracts the attention of Quentin Tarantino, a director who values exactly the kind of complex, uncompromising performances that other filmmakers tend to cut. Their collaboration becomes one of cinema's most successful partnerships. Partly because Tarantino understands what Jackson brings and refuses to diminish it. Quentin gets it, Jackson says. He knows that the moment you start cutting for comfort, you lose the truth. And without truth, you just have expensive lies. Years pass. Jackson's career flourishes, but he never stops talking about A Time to Kill. In interviews, at film festivals, during award ceremonies, he keeps bringing it up. People told me to let it go, he admits. They said it made me look bitter. But I wasn't bitter. I was educational. I wanted other actors to know what could happen to them. Jackson's persistence pays off. His willingness to discuss industry problems publicly contributes to broader conversations about representation, creative control, and the treatment of minority artists. His story also serves as a lesson for young actors. It shows them Hollywood's realities, helping them be prepared. This experience made me a more conscious actor, Jackson says. In my subsequent projects, I started better calculating which scenes might be cut, which performances would be preserved. In 2022, the Academy Awards give Samuel L. Jackson an honorary Oscar. It's recognition long overdue, but it carries special weight because everyone knows why it took so long. During his acceptance speech, Jackson is gracious but pointed. He thanks the Academy while making it clear that his worth was never dependent on their validation. This award doesn't change what happened with A Time to Kill, he says afterward, but it acknowledges that something was wrong. Sometimes that's the best you can get. This award is a tribute to Jackson's career and resilience, but it's also an indirect admission of how the system failed him. Today, somewhere in a vault or on a hard drive, Jackson's deleted scene still exists. It stands as a monument to what was lost, not just for Jackson, but for cinema itself. How many more scenes like this have been lost? How many moments of truth have been sacrificed for commercial concerns? How many artists have had their voices silenced in editing rooms? I think about young actors today, Jackson says. I want them to know this can happen. But I also want them to know it doesn't have to end their career. It didn't end mine. Jackson's story teaches that resilience isn't about accepting injustice. It's about refusing to let injustice define you. Jackson's A Time to Kill experience has become a perfect case study for understanding how Hollywood works. Talent doesn't always win. Sometimes political decisions, commercial concerns, and system dynamics are more powerful. But this story has another dimension. Jackson sharing this experience doesn't just expose his own injustice, it reveals the problems of an entire industry. I was never naive in the same way after this, Jackson says. Trusting that my work would be protected was a mistake I made. I never made that mistake again. This lesson applies not just to acting, but to any creative field. Talented people regularly have their best work overlooked or diminished for reasons beyond their control. What sets Jackson apart is his refusal to let these disappointments define him. Instead of being angry about what was taken from him, he focused on creating new opportunities. Today, Samuel L. Jackson is one of the highest-grossing actors in film history. He's appeared in over 150 films, become the face of major franchises, and inspired countless performers. His career stands as proof that talent will ultimately find a way to shine, even when systems try to dim its light. But the deleted scenes from A Time to Kill remain as a reminder of what was lost. Those 37 seconds, and the additional cut scenes, represent not just one actor's missed opportunity, but an entire industry's failure to recognize excellence. Jackson's story teaches us important things about power, representation, and the ongoing struggle for equality in entertainment. Behind every film we see are countless decisions about whose stories get told and how they're allowed to be told. The theft of Samuel L. Jackson's Oscar wasn't just about one award or one performance. It was about power, representation, and the ongoing struggle for equity in entertainment. Jackson built a great career despite this situation. But that lost scene that missed Oscar chance will remain one of Hollywood history's biggest what-if stories. The 37 seconds stolen from Jackson in 1996 may have cost him an award, but they revealed something more important: his character, his resilience, and his refusal to be silenced by injustice. That's the real victory in this story. Samuel L. Jackson deserved that Oscar. He earned it with talent, preparation, and a performance that moved everyone who saw it. Being robbed of the opportunity doesn't diminish his achievement. It exposes the system that allowed such theft to occur, and perhaps that's a more valuable legacy than any golden statuette. The moment Jackson delivered that performance, he knew he had created something special. The tears of hardened professionals, the stunned silence, the overwhelming emotion. These weren't reactions to good acting. They were responses to truth being spoken through art. That scene was more than just dialogue, Jackson reflects. It was testimony. It was every black father's fear and love made manifest. It was the kind of moment that changes people. But Hollywood wasn't ready for that kind of change. The industry was comfortable with black pain when it served their narratives, but not when it challenged their comfort zones. The deletion of Jackson's scene represents a pattern that extends far beyond one actor or one film. It reflects systemic biases about whose stories matter, whose pain is worth exploring, and whose humanity deserves full expression. They didn't just cut my scene, Jackson observes. They cut a piece of truth. They decided that Carl Lee's full humanity was too much for audiences to handle. This decision reveals the paternalistic nature of Hollywood's relationship with both its black artists and its audiences. Studio executives made choices about what viewers could or couldn't handle, what emotions were appropriate, what truths were acceptable. But Jackson's response to this betrayal shows the power of persistence and principle. Rather than being broken by the system's failure, he used it as fuel for advocacy and excellence. His willingness to speak openly about these experiences helped pave the way for industry changes. While progress has been slow and incomplete, conversations about representation and creative control that seemed impossible in 1996 are now mainstream discussions. Every time I tell this story, Jackson says, I hope it prevents the same thing from happening to someone else. I hope it makes people think twice before they cut away someone's truth. The irony of Jackson's situation is that his deleted scene from A Time to Kill has become more famous than many scenes that stayed in their films. By speaking about what was lost, he's ensured that the loss itself becomes part of cinema history. Maybe that's fitting, Jackson muses. Maybe the absence says more than the presence ever could have. Today, when film preservation experts discuss lost performances and deleted scenes, Jackson's A Time to Kill moment stands as a powerful example of what can be lost when commerce overrides art. The scene exists somewhere, preserved in archives or on hard drives. Future generations might have the opportunity to see what Jackson accomplished in those few minutes, to understand more fully what was sacrificed on the altar of marketability. Until then, Jackson's story serves as both a cautionary tale and an inspiration. It warns of the dangers of trusting systems more than principles, while also demonstrating that talent and truth can survive even the most egregious betrayals. They took something from me, Jackson concludes, but they also showed me exactly who they were. And once you know who someone really is, you can never be surprised by them again. That knowledge, hard-won and painfully acquired, became Jackson's armor for the rest of his career. It informed his choices, shaped his advocacy, and ensured that future actors would benefit from his experience. The 37 seconds that were stolen from Samuel L. Jackson in 1996 cost him an Oscar, but they gave him something else. A platform for truth-telling that has lasted decades and touched countless lives. In the end, that might be the greatest performance of all.